Welcome to the Mike and Doug Show. Hi, I'm Doug.
I'm Mike.
Mike, today you went deeper. So I assume you didn't even give the miners the weekend off because you went deeper into Torbaville, into Torbology, and into Dominion. Is it called theology or Dominion what?
Dominion theology. Yeah.
Theology, which I didn't know anything about. But also the most astounding, ridiculous thing I think I've ever seen in my whole life is in the recent report of Americans for Innovation, telling us who Andrew Torba is and what Gab is really all about, took apart some of his Gabs, his communications, and showed what he believes in. He believes in a monarchy, he believes in dominion theology, and he believes in Jesus land. Now that's insulting to me, that he literally has cut America basically in half, given the top half to the Brits through the United States of Canada and a monarchy, and the bottom half for Jesus land, as he calls it.
Who says that?
It sounds as if I'm making a joke. It sounds as if I'm being insulting, but no. At first, I didn't understand why my lovely wife, Tyla, and her team said, focus on Torba. I'm going, he's just an idiot. He doesn't know anything. The leader of free speech, you have to be kidding. This guy can't even speak properly. And then when he puts stuff up as his own Gabs, what he spouts is the most shallow Christianity that went from being a Jesuit-trained Catholic to supposedly the leader of the evangelical movement of Jesus land. And I know that sounds ridiculous. You're going to smile every time
I have to smile.
Jesus,
so stupid.
He wants to put Jesus in the metaverse. So is that the Jesus verse? The metaverse is the most grotesque anti-Christian thing ever created in human history. And here we have Torba telling us, jump into the metaverse, get with dominion theology, and follow me. I have the banner for free speech. You basically proved all of that is complete nonsense. So can you fill us in on the truth about Torbology?
He has posted an enormous amount of material on Christian subjects. Our researchers have been compiling all that over the last few weeks and looking into his background. And he is one of the oddest examples of a cardboard cutout that we have looked at. As it's looking like now, he was an empty vessel that was sent to the Jesuit University of Scranton to have this Pilgrim Society message poured into him, and then he was then placed at Gab. That's what it's looking like. The theological writings that we see, you really can't call them theology. It's the oddest combination of ideas I have ever seen. I used to be the European director of an evangelical gospel music group. We were doing serious work in Europe and all over the world in 27 different countries. And so I would be considered an expert in this area because one of the things that we did for the decade I was in was we would go into various places, schools, prisons, churches, concert halls, on the radio, on TV, all over Europe. And in most of the occasions, we would invite people to become Christians. So therefore, I've seen a lot of people truly convert to Christ and have their lives changed, have their lives turned around, have them go off of drugs, to get out of trouble, to get out of prison. So I've seen a lot of what I would consider conversions of integrity. But what Torba describes is nothing like that. What I have read in all this stuff that's been sent to me is somebody who is trying to pretend that they've had a conversion, but what is dramatically lacking in all the things that are being claimed here is any kind of humility. What you see with people who have truly converted to Christ is you see a humility when they've had a change. And what you don't see with anything Torba writes is any sort of humility. You see a lot of aggression. You see a lot of this supposed evangelical drive to create what he calls a parallel Christian economy, a parallel Christian society, the kind of verbiage you would see, I think, from somebody who plays at being a Christian in their day job, but is really not. I don't want to be judgmental of him because nobody knows what's in his heart. But what we see in his behavior is not credible. He's trying to conflate different ideas into a single supposed Jesus land, which, I mean, who says that? I mean, that is the oddest name I've ever seen. And they're applying it to about half of the United States, where they are trying to propose that all the evangelical Christians are, and everybody else is going to move to Canada. Or actually, Canada is going to annex about, 17 states that they've proposed. And you're in that group, by the way. I don't know if you ever got that memo.
They won't take me alive. Sorry. I won't go back to the Queen.
You never left the Queen, and that's the whole point. The British never left. We have never been an independent country, and the propaganda has raged for hundreds of years. But Mike, your research has uncovered that Torba agrees with this.
It seems like every time we dig into somebody's conduct in this new world we're living in, other things spill out. And one of the things that we discovered in looking at his background is the activity of his father and his grandfather. And his grandfather was in the United States Navy and was actually present when President Truman had just come off of the Potsdam Conference. He went back to England. He got on the USS Augusta in Plymouth Harbor in England, and then he met up with the king. 4 days later, 4 days after this meeting, the first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. We see the British really playing up the idea that this is the first time an American president and a king of England have ever joined up on a ship where the king's flag flew above the American flag. There is a very strong symbolism there that some basic sovereignty of the United States was formally handed over. That's what we see in all this record and all the things that we now know about the strategy of the Pilgrim Society to form a one world government, which would be run from England and which the king would then be the titular head of. And Torba's grandfather was on that boat on that day, and he was in a special pay grade that allowed him to continue to get pay 17 months after he left the Navy in 1946. And so the question is, what was he doing? And we now know from looking at the USS Augusta that it was one of the most wireless technology-laden ships in our fleet. And it's pretty apparent that Torba's grandfather was involved in naval intelligence. And then his father was a 28-year courier for FedEx. And that seems like an odd career choice until you realize that it is notoriously known that FedEx was a CIA creation and therefore is also involved with naval intelligence. So it starts to make more sense why they would have picked this Andrew Torba to be somebody that they would put their time and energy in as an American who had no family background, and they could easily manipulate by sending him to a Jesuit college. His major was philosophy with a minor in entrepreneurship and political science, which is a really odd mix. But I'm going to ask you, Douglas, in a Jesuit university, when you're studying philosophy, what does that tell you as a former Jesuit?
That you're being brainwashed. Probably the biggest impact of the Jesuits on most students who go through a Jesuit college, they'll tell you that their class on Aristotelian metaphysics was the principal turning point of their life. Aristotle didn't believe in the divine. So here you have Jesuits teaching a philosophy that is at the basis of everything else that comes out of them. All of them basically are saying we might anthropomorphize the earth and call her nature or natura or something, but in general, they really don't believe in the divine.
So why did the Jesuits identify with the Roman Catholic Church then?
Why did the Khazarians choose to be Jewish? They had the choice of Catholic, Jew, Muslim. Why did Ignatius of Loyola, who lost his leg in the war in the Levant, came back and decided that he was going to create a military organization that would swear their life to the Pope and become the militant arm of the Pope that would kill and be pre-forgiven for killing? And no matter what the Jesuits delved into, it didn't matter because they were forgiven for what they were doing because they were the direct warriors of the Pope. All Jesuits who become ordained have to go through a special training where they meditate on literally Christ returning to the earth as the conqueror of the earth. Why did Torba do what he did? He was taught to.
We see that he is making a play for customers and to be an alternative to Twitter. He made a big deal out of saying that he converted his initial invention to something called Mastodon, which Trump's Truth Social also implemented. We had people looking at that, and it's clear that Mastodon is nothing but a copy of the IBM Eclipse Foundation, and probably is founded by the Eclipse Foundation along with the Chinese version, Open Power. They're all using our invention. Torba, he says he's using open source, so he doesn't have to pay anybody for any kind of intellectual property. Sorry, Torba, that's not correct. You're using our invention. And so is True Social, because True Social made a big deal of using Mastodon. So Mastodon appears to be another name for this unification of the global technology landscape around one social environment that then can be mounted from a database viewpoint so that all data flowing all over the world can be consolidated into one place, whatever the label is, whatever the brand label is. So the fact that you went to Germany and you picked Mastodon and implemented that doesn't change the underlying intellectual property question. The license should be paid to Leader Technologies, and you're claiming it's open source.
So who is Torba? Is he a monarchist who is a traitor to America? Is he simply a pilgrim playing both sides, trying to lead everybody astray? Or is he simply the person who's gathering the metadata that's going to be used against conservatives and followers of Q and followers of MAGA and anybody they think is not a Democrat, so that they can do what? Use it against them.